brainstorm.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Whether you're a full-time resident of the Sunshine State or a part-time one, or maybe just planning a vacation, their website, myfwc.com, has all the info you need on boater safety, hunting and fishing, exploring protected marine and wetlands areas, and hurricane preparedness. To stay safe, go to www.myfwc.com.
All right, Dr. Troyer, welcome to episode 11 of Killer Inventions on the Killer Means Awesome podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Geller. It's great to be here.
Crazy that it's episode 11, which means it is the penultimate episode of the season. Am I wrong?
You're 100% correct. And we're really starting to bump up against some deadlines here in terms of deciding what season 4 will be.
Yes. What do we do?
I don't know. I'm torn.
Yeah.
I like shipwrecks. I have a couple of inventions I never did get to. I could do inventions again.
A lot of talk about crime, like some sort of like Killer Means Awesome take on crime. I don't know.
Oh, that would be great.
I think that could be good. So a lot to consider. We do have an email address, killermeansawesome, all one word, at gmail.com. killermeansawesome@gmail.com. If you have specific thoughts about what next season should include.
Perfect segue. We got a great email this week from a listener named Alex in the Dallas, Texas area.
Yeah, Lone Star State.
He said he likes to listen to the pod while he's at work. And guess what he does for work?
Hoping it's nothing too serious, right? Because we don't want to distract like a surgeon, because we're a captivating listen.
Well, it's serious to me. He drives a truck for the Frito-Lay company.
No way. I love Fritos.
In the email, he said he's a local driver for Frito-Lay. I looked that up on the website. Frito-Lay says they use the term delivery specialist.
Wow. It's like my sister had a boyfriend in high school. He was a petroleum engineer, but he worked at a gas station. He just pumped gas.
Yeah. No, but Alex drives the truck. You see it around town. It's got the pictures of the potato chips on the side.
Love that. Fantastic. And he listens to the pod.
Likes to listen to us while he's at work. Like I said last week, it's not a huge audience that we have, but it's important people. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like, it's people who kind of, I don't know if it's the Hasidic Jews or the Kabbalists or what.
It probably is.
They had the whole theory. There's like 36 people who are secretly kind of like keeping the whole universe running. And
wow, is that true?
They're like ordinary people. You don't even know who they are, but they're the hidden. I'm not saying Alex is one of them. I'm just leaving that possibility.
Well, he keeps things humming along, and I'm glad that we're able to help him pass the time by listening to the pod.
Snacks are important.
They're vital.
In another important piece of housekeeping today, starting a new feature, I wanted to let you know what the closing share price today was for the Odyssey Marine Exploration Company.
Yeah, what's going on with that? I'm glad you're tracking that, because most people say just put it away for a decade or two.
That company trades on the NASDAQ, and they closed out today at $3.58 per share.
Okay, that's not negative, right? That's on the positive side, $3.
Well, but the negative side is that I purchased my shares. I own 1,267 shares of
do the math on that. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I purchased mine for roughly $16 per share.
So that's the other direction. So you purchased high, now it's low. So I think you got to wait it out. It's going to come back.
Yeah, so I'll leave that
what goes down might come up, right? Isn't that the saying?
Let's leave that to our listeners who are good at math to come up with the dollar figure that I've lost so far. Fortunately, my wife and I don't think I've probably asked you this before. Does your family listen to the pod?
No.
Yeah, mine definitely does not.
I mean, my wife does. when I remind her and guilt her into it. And my eldest son does listen to it as a sleep aid. And that's pretty much where it ends right there, family-wise.
Doesn't matter. We got the 36 hidden masters of the universe. Or I bet we have at least 2 of those 36 listen to us.
Yeah. I mean, you throw a quarter, you hit one of those masters. I don't know. Like, I think the odds are good we have at least a couple.
I did hear from an old high school soccer teammate of mine.
Okay.
Go Quakers. He said there is no way we ever played Germantown Friends. That school's in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but that's not that far. It could have been a tournament, right? Like a regional tournament.
I will say that we did do a preseason training in Pennsylvania in the Poconos, or as they say, the Poconos. Perhaps this teammate of mine is correct. So let's just correct that for the record. No games from the Sidwell team against Germantown Friends. That's it for my housekeeping. Where did people listen in from last week?
We have 3 great places. I don't believe we've heard from these listeners before, but let's say hello to Charleston, South Carolina.
Fantastic.
Down in the South.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
That's really
Charleston.
cool. Yeah. And I feel like South Carolina, maybe we'll get back there. If we do true crime next season, there's always something breaking loose in South Carolina.
It seems, like there's a lot of intrigue, a lot of mystery in South Carolina.
Okay, well, welcome to the folks or folk.
Welcome to Charleston, 1670. That's when Charleston was founded.
Whoa.
Also, staying on the East Coast, but going quite a bit north, let's say hello to our friends in Biddeford, Maine. It's in York County. Who knew?
Fantastic. Well, I did. Used to live in Maine, but
there you go.
Man, that's awesome. So we're working the East Coast, and then give us the third point on the triangle here.
Yeah, it's going to go all the way west up to Sparwood, British Columbia. Sparwood. It's the second largest community on the Elk River. I mean, that's pretty far up there. You know what I mean? Sparwood.
Oh, man, now I'm curious what the first biggest one is on the Elk River.
Yeah.
That's a good name, Sparwood.
Sparwood, British Columbia. Only about 4,000 residents. So we have a decent percentage of the population up there in Sparwood.
Very cool.
Yeah, so those are the 3 places. We have Charleston, South Carolina. Could not be more excited. Biddeford, Maine is super fantastic, all the way up north. And then going all the way west to Sparwood, British Columbia.
We're still just killing in Canada. Huh?
Yeah, we're big in Canada.
Does it have to do with our manner, or is it the subject matter, or is it just they don't have a ton of stuff to do?
I think it's, entertainment options, limited north of the border. I think that they don't have as many options. I think that's where we land. But you know what? Who cares, right? We're trying to make everyone's day a little brighter, be it Canadians or, people down in Charleston, South Carolina.
And if you think about it, even if we only have one listener in Sparwood, like that's chunk.
We do only have one.
Okay, but still, that's 1 out of every 4,000 people in Sparwood is listening to our show.
It's like when you say, do we have a huge audience? Well, in Sparwood, we kind of do. Like if you go by the ratio, right? We're just doing math. It's fine. All right, well, Dr. This is episode 11. This is you presenting an invention to our audience. I could not be more excited because I get to sit back, as you know, and just listen to the story. Are you ready to
rumble? I am. Let's do it. Let's first start out with a couple of fun facts, or at least they're facts, and then you can decide whether they're fun or not. In 2014,
according I remember that year.
Yeah, not that long ago.
No.
According to Time magazine, the top 2 hobbies in the world were...
Wow, hobbies. I mean, everyone was on their phone back then, right? So, I mean,
I would have guessed, you can't go wrong with video games and internet porn, but those were not the answers. And honestly, I'm not even sure this is accurate, but Time magazine claimed that gardening was number 1. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And number 2 was genealogy.
Oh, yeah, because probably those websites came online, Ancestry.com and that kind of thing.
Sure.
Okay.
And of course, genealogy, fancy word for family history.
Right.
Now, have you dabbled in the genealogy game yourself?
I've dabbled. I wouldn't say I'm an enthusiast. I wouldn't say that I've spent significant time, but dabbled is the right way to go. I've done some internet searches, a little bit of genetic testing, light, and then that's it.
I'm going to put you down for a dabbler.
Thank you.
Now, so if you've done genealogy for any period of time, one thing you know is building your family tree got a hell of a lot easier due to the internet. In the old days, it was a pain in the butt. You were sending out requests by mail.
You got to go talk to people before they die.
Yeah, you were just relying basically on the Mormons.
Right.
The Mormons keep bizarrely,
Everybody is
yeah,
with them,
exactly. Keep great records. Okay, but nowadays, comparatively, genealogy is a breeze, especially if your family's from like Western Europe or, like the UK or Germany or Switzerland. You can go from 0 to 60,
Everyone starts coming out of the woodwork. Yeah.
exactly. You can get
Yeah.
back without a ton of work and with just like a light sprinkling of OCD tendencies. You can get your family, you can get your family like back into the 1600s or 1500s,
Right.
like no problem.
But I'm more concerned about the extended family still alive that now you have to deal with. Like, most people want to sort of close ranks, like maybe eliminate some of the family members you have issues. Now you're saying, ooh, maybe more families better. That's scary. You know what I'm saying? Like
Well, I guess
1600, sure. Give me all the people that were,
yeah. I
related.
guess the counter argument is it's just good to be aware of them, even if you're not going to be in touch with them. It's just good to know where everybody is.
Good point. Okay.
Okay. So, but the point is, it is a good time to be alive if you're into genealogy. Okay. And do you know who some of the best genealogists?
But didn't you have to do a family history in school? Like you have to write the family. So like imagine now, right? Like now it could be done to snap your fingers and you got instant family history online.
Yeah, and give it another year or two when you throw in AI, it's like school presentation, like block out a week, And do you know who some of the best genealogists are in the world besides the Mormons?
No, I don't.
Well, whether they're working on their own family trees or they're doing it for other families for pay, some of the best genealogists in the world are women.
Really?
Correct.
I'm trying to think of that show. Don't they have a show where you go on and they reveal your genealogy?
Yeah, there's Find Your Roots. There's
Find Your Roots. But the host isn't a woman.
Who in the world are? Yeah, but it's like a team of women who are doing the work, and then they trot out the professor Skip Gates, who
Henry Louis Gates, right? Yeah, exactly.
He acts like he's been burning
he
the midnight
back there
oil
with the microscope.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Let me see. Was that what RNA? No, we're talking DNA, dude. Get the slide off the machine. Okay.
So I do not want to run afoul of corporate, so I won't hazard a guess as to why women are so good at it. But I will say that the hero of today's episode, an incredibly impressive innovator, is indeed a woman.
Really? A genealogist woman?
Yes. But one last thing before we get to our hero. Along with the explosion in genealogy,
yes,
there was another broad trend which is important for us to understand, and that really kicks into gear starting around 2000.
Mm-hmm.
And it's then that the rapid advances in DNA testing make that like an affordable, accessible thing to the masses. Like you can get your own DNA tested, you can get your kids tested,
right.
You can get
23andMe,
you can get your dog tested, you can, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, the dog testing is interesting. It tells you exactly what like the mix was.
Yeah, I've always wondered like how accurate that is. I mean, there's always a couple little wild cards in there, like also 2% American Eskimo dog or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it feels like it would be one of those like 8-ball scenarios where it's like had a great bloodline and also met with some controversy, later at the puppy mill.
But, good for the TV show.
But this is like the 23andMe. I don't know what year that came out, but that was when.
Right. So 23andMe, I think, is around 2007. Before them in the UK, there's something called the Oxford Ancestors Company, and that's a little bit earlier. But what it means is at home, you can do a simple mouth swab and you can learn like the general parameters of what they call like the deep ancestry going back tens of thousands of years in history. Like, it looks like your group migrated out of Africa roughly this many 10,000 years ago.
Wow.
Whatever.
Yeah, that's cool.
But in addition to that, for the more recent part of your family tree, you can build a much more complete tree. You can find birth parents if you were adopted. You can learn about risk factors for certain illnesses. DNA testing, everywhere now, so we forget how recent it is, but it's a very powerful tool. Suddenly, like I said, it's available to the masses. So those are the two big trends that we want to talk about: the rising popularity and accessibility of both the genealogy work online and DNA testing. Okay,
Yes.
both of those ramping up really fast from 2000 to 2015. Now we're going to introduce our hero.
Hello.
Her name is Cece Moore. That's spelled Cece, and then the last name is Moore. Just a tad younger than you and I are. She's born January 69.
Yes.
Okay. Late January. She's a Capricorn. So as you will know, the Capricorn, when everything's, firing on all cylinders.
Let me get my Infamous books out. I've lost my
get that
astrology.
out. Let me.
Is that astrology? Are we talking astronomy? Or what is this?
I'm just going through the charts here. If a Capricorn is in alignment, they're known for being persistent, patient, sensitive, good CEOs and leaders, and high achievers.
Wow.
Okay, that's if you're a good Capricorn. We'll find out. Okay, so our friend Cece Moore, she's grown up in California. Good student, bit of a bookworm, quiet, but also talented in theater and music.
Wow.
And like a lot of girls from that era and from the eras before her, big fan of Nancy Drew.
Wow, yeah,
Loves the Nancy
Hardy
Drew
Boys
stories.
And Nancy Drew. Yep.
Yeah. When it was time for college, she goes to USC on a scholarship.
Wow.
And she studies music.
Wow. Okay. Not genealogy.
No. She, after college, for the next 20 years, Ms. Moore worked as an actress, a singer, and a model.
You're kidding.
And had modest success, mostly doing TV commercials, stuff like that. By the time she's in her 40s, she's still like earning money. She's casting and directing other performers in various ad campaigns, which is fine as far as it went. But Ms. Moore said she had a nagging feeling that she wasn't making full use of her talents.
Wow. Okay.
And she thought back to when she was a teenager in high school, and there was some pilot program at her school where a bunch of kids got their IQs tested. And even before she saw hers, and this teacher's like handing out the results or something, the teacher says, well, at least we all know now who among us is going to cure cancer. And then she stopped at Cece's desk and gave her results.
Wow.
Cece scored very high on the IQ.
Okay.
So that's why, years later in her 40s, she's like working on ad campaigns.
Right.
And she's like, what am I doing exactly? She's uninspired, and she gets sucked into that genealogy boom that we talked about, Ancestry, 23andMe, all that stuff. Starts doing it for fun. And I guess, unsurprisingly, given the IQ result, she's really good at it.
Right.
And she begins helping some friends. She starts a Facebook group, and soon enough, she says screw it to her prior career, and she starts working as a professional genealogist.
So self-taught? She just sort of had an interest and then became professional.
Exactly. She builds family trees for other people. She helps with TV shows, like we mentioned. She helps people track down birth parents.
What about the crime stuff?
Well, she starts to, because like one of the things is government agencies trying to identify human remains, whether it's soldiers or a car accident victim or, somebody that was killed years ago. And so she starts to learn the DNA side of it as well. And what she says is this is when she feels like, okay, she's starting to live her full life. She said it was a joy to turn up for work. She was fascinated by it all, even if she was working on somebody else's family tree, it was just utterly fascinating to her.
Wow.
And then all of this just gets absolutely turbocharged in 2018.
2018, not that long ago.
No, 6 years ago. Okay, that is when, for the first time, using her self-taught knowledge of genealogy and also her at least, passable or, pretty good understanding of DNA, that's the first time that she solves a murder.
No way. Oh, wow. Okay, then now we're getting somewhere. So she has worked herself up and now she's solving murders.
Yeah. And the first one is not just any murder. It's a murder that the cops, have had on their desk for 31 years, have not been able to solve, classic cold case situation.
Yeah, yeah.
That one, the deceased was a woman whose name I'll probably butcher. It's Tanya Van Kylenborg.
Sounds almost right. Yeah.
We'll, we'll call her Tanya.
Call her Tanya, please.
Tanya, unfortunately, was killed in
Oof.
Snohomish County, Washington. And the murderer was a man named William Earl Talbot II. I'm always interested when people go with the second as opposed to junior. It's weird.
Interesting. Yeah, what is that? Is that a skip generation type thing?
I think it's just they think it's cooler than junior to put the
Right.
Roman numeral.
Interesting.
Whatever.
Yeah. Seems like a lot of killers have middle names. Am I wrong? Like it seems like it's always like James or whatever. Like they all have those names.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like if you or I got caught for killing, would all of a sudden we'd be identified with our full name like that?
Yeah, good point. Like maybe they just add the middle name because they want it to sound official.
Yeah, like especially if you're the cops and you're like not 100% sure you got the right guy and you're just trying to like really sell it. It's like, okay, let's lean into that middle name because like
Dr. Rosen. What?
Yeah. It's like, oh boy, they gave all three names. That guy definitely did it.
But do you think there is a reason, going back to the William Earl Talbot the second, there must be some rule around when you use junior and when you use the second, right? Like, I don't think you get to decide.
I think you do.
Really?
I don't know. All right. So basically, how does it work? What was the invention which Ms. Moore and then a few others, especially this one other woman, what was the invention that we're talking about that led, starting in 2018, to what has turned into just an avalanche of solving cold cases?
Yeah, like what did she develop that was proprietary to her versus just like had enough time to spend, doing the internet searching?
Okay, well, first of all, before we get into that, the other woman that's really known for this is a woman named Barbara Ray Venter, born in Australia. The thing that they come up with, the technique they come up with, you'll see it referred to different ways. Like there was a dude arrested in your neighborhood just last week, the guy who was a rapist from Massachusetts.
Yes.
And nowadays,
71 now. Like he eluded, getting cuffed for 40 years or something.
Yeah, and did you see that? They had like 100 cops there to arrest him. The guy weighed like 400 pounds.
But you could literally get like half a den of Boy Scouts and like it'd be no big deal. Like they'd take that guy down.
Yeah, the resources to take, yeah, that was crazy.
Overmatched.
But anyway, by now, whenever I see those cold cases, I always skip on down, and sure enough, there it is, forensic genetic genealogy.
Right.
So that's what they call it now. Another term for it is investigative genetic genealogy. It's not the brainchild of a single person, but it is the result of kind of the parallel development of those two big trends, the genealogy and the home testing of DNA.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add in the arrival of the internet.
Right.
But these two women are just so good at it, so patient.
But did they codify the process, like turn in some sort of systematic approach?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And so now they teach it to other people. And so largely that's what they're doing now, is teaching other people how to do it. And it's kind of to the point now where the cops have their own in-house genetic genealogist who's gone and done the course or whatever. So because it was becoming a bottleneck, if there's like 2 or 3 people that are really, really good at it, like that's not enough.
Yeah. Of course. You got to do it at scale.
So anyway, 2018 is the year that the two of them working independently basically crack the code. Ms. Moore had assembled a small team of genetic genealogists under her at her company, which was called Parabon Nanolabs. And in 2018, they solved 18 cold cases.
Wow.
In 1 year.
That's incredible.
And these are generally either rapes or murders is what we're talking about. And the ones that are, I mean, it's horrible enough when you have a loved one who dies in bed, but then not to know what the hell happened for 30 years or 40 years. And to think, okay, whoever did it's walking around out there. This sucks.
Yeah. And you think people gave up. So it's like you feel like it's just over.
So these were cases, which many of which have gone nowhere for decades, and now they start. It's like boom, 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 like dominoes. Like they start getting
Wow.
solved quickly. Today, Moore and her team just themselves have solved more than 300 cases,
Oh
leading
my
to court
God.
cases. They have also, on the other end of the process, helped free wrongfully convicted people by showing who the actual killer was.
Well, I thought you were going to say on the other side, they've also wrongly convicted so many people by just mixing up at the lab whose DNAs was who.
Yeah, just mixing up the family trees. No. They exonerate. The Innocence Project. These people that are trying to get people off death row and stuff like that. They develop a feel for a righteous case. Like, okay, this guy never. He's insisted on his innocence right to the end. He's passed up deals along the way, and so they have a
Right.
decent idea. They do triage. They get an idea of like, we really think this is a righteous case. And so on some of those, they would go to these, especially if there was a DNA sample from the crime scene way back when, they go to these people. And so two things basically to understand about the process. Now, one is that in hindsight, sure, it looks obvious. It's like, okay, in the old days, law enforcement had a tiny DNA database to run crime scene DNA against.
Right.
It's
right.
like people who've already been caught doing something else.
Right, of course. Yeah. Isn't that how it is still? Like if you haven't been arrested and had your sample taken, then how would you pop up in their database?
Exactly. So that's where she comes into play.
Okay, well hold on. Before you
Yes.
tell us how she comes into play as it relates to, well, how are they going to find someone who has not already been in the criminal justice system? Because I think that's where you're going. I could be
Exactly.
wrong. Okay, well then great. So then that's a good cliffhanger. Let's hear from our new sponsor and then continue on the other side.
Fantastic. Last year in Florida, there were 659 boating accidents and 59 fatalities. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission believes that safe boating is a choice and boating education is critical. Also, if you were born on or after January 1st, 1988, you must complete an approved boater safety course in order to operate a boat legally in the state. Visit myfwc.com for details. Make the choice to boat safely. Lives depend on it.
Oh, so Dr. Troyer, when we left off, you were describing that somehow Cece had come up with a process by which that she could find people who have not already submitted their DNA into the criminal justice system. Is that true?
Exactly. So in the old days, like classically, the DNA came into play more like when cops already kind of had an idea who might have done it or who are the few people who might have done it. And sure, okay, we'll find a way to get their DNA and test it against some DNA we found at the scene. That's not as useful in a cold case where it's like, okay, we got nothing. Like a body was dumped on the side of the interstate. We don't have the first freaking clue about this. Okay. But thanks to that explosion of interest in both DNA and genealogy and millions of people just voluntarily loading their own DNA onto the internet.
Tapping into that. Yeah.
Loading their own DNA onto the internet and loading their own family trees onto the internet.
Wow.
The possibilities for police were suddenly just incredible.
Yeah. I mean, are there privacy issues there? Like if you don't want to?
We'll get into it. Okay. So in hindsight, yeah, sure. It looks a little bit kind of obvious and like shooting fish in a barrel. An important thing to understand is even you take some crime scene DNA, some blood or skin tissue or whatever from the crime scene, even when you run it against some of the, millions of people who voluntarily put their DNA online, even if you get a hit, it's really only the very beginning of a laborious process because it's generally like a third cousin or a fourth cousin.
Right.
And you have to build a massive family tree for that person.
Who has time for that?
And well, yeah, Cece did, it turned out, and Barbara. Yeah, you have to build a massive family tree, and then you have to start to apply some, more old-fashioned law enforcement techniques to it. Like, okay, so, this crime,
old-fashioned shoe leather.
shoe leather.
Yeah.
If you want to use that term, we could use shoe leather. I mean, I'm vegan, but we can say leather.
Faux leather.
Stuff like, okay, let's build out this tree. And I mean, just having worked on my own, doing your own family tree, even if you're just tracing like, okay, my dad's mom and dad and their mom and
Right.
dad and their, but she's building out the thing where it's like, okay, who were all their kids and who did all of their kids have as kids? This one, I wish that this was an audio presentation because you can just, how fast and huge family trees get is
I
perfect
can't imagine.
for a visual. Yeah, often just a third or fourth cousin.
And then CC figured out how to then go from the third cousin to the suspect.
Yeah, well, to the suspect, or like typically what she'll do is she'll get it down to like a like say like there's 3 brothers, and she's like, okay, it appears like it's one of these brothers. I can't tell you which one.
Right.
So then that's when they say, okay, we think it's this particular nuclear family. We think it's maybe one of these 3 brothers, and
Right.
then that's almost treated as a tip by the cops, like a very good tip. Like, okay, let's now see if we can get the DNA from these 3 brothers or from their parents, or, like one common technique is just the cops get a warrant, or I don't even know if you need a warrant when you're just like going into their trash, which has been left on the curb, and testing DNA from that. Other times, when they haven't gotten even that close, when the tree is still big and they're still trying to narrow it down, sometimes they even ask people in that tree, hey, I'm working on a project for law enforcement. They're trying to solve a really old cold case. And there's nobody in your immediate family who's either the victim or the perpetrator of this, but it looks like you're a distant cousin of somebody who was involved. Would you be willing to, and people just over and over again say, yeah, sure.
Wow.
I mean, maybe now people are getting a little more sophisticated about it. But so anyway, that, as I said, they just turn their work over to the cops, and then the cops take it from there.
Unbelievable.
And then, some of the things the cops are looking at is like, okay, this family that she's identified, like, do they live in the area anywhere near the crime scene? And if not, where have these kids gone to college? Where have these kids worked? What's their work history? Is there anything that would connect them? They go back through the reports. Were any of these people named in the police reports back at the scene of the...
But does Nano Labs, is this Parabon Labs, do they have their own software that they run that finds all these connections, or are they just documenting it in some way?
Well, what they have to, it's not like there's different companies that you can use, 23andMe or Ancestry, and then there's still other companies where they're like, look, if you've gotten tested somewhere else, no problem. You can still upload your results on our site. And, we have really good software. So in the early days, cops are just having to go to each of these and sort of like almost like enter the DNA from the crime scene as if it's a person, and then see like, oh, so-and-so is your third cousin, so-and-so is your fourth cousin, so-and-so. And then you're like, okay, we found the family. Oh, another weird thing that happens is then once in a while they'll identify somebody, and sure enough, that person's DNA is at the scene, but they had nothing to do with the freaking murder. Like they rented that apartment like 2 years before and like cut their finger, cooking. And, so that does happen. And those people then are ruled out if they can make it clear, like, no, I mean, I lived there for 2 years before that crime happened. But
that's going to be some like Kafka-esque type take where it'll be like the DNA was everywhere where it shouldn't have been. But clearly, oh gosh, yeah, that's a nightmare.
One of the best known cases from 2018 is the so-called Golden State Killer.
Oh, right.
Mr. D'Angelo, guy.
Yes, Joseph, the police officer.
Yeah, he'd been a police officer, guilty of a whole bunch of rapes, killings, just terrorized a whole area. I think where was it? It was like Central California.
Yeah, Visalia and that whole area. Wait, was CC involved in that?
CC didn't do that one. CC was more like piling up a lot of cases, whereas this woman, Barbara Ray Venter, whose husband, I think they've since split, but her husband is Craig Venter, who is one of the first to, map the human genome. But anyway, Barbara Ray Venter worked on that case. And I think that one was so time consuming that, that was taking all her time. Whereas like Cece's just knocking them down one after the other.
So that was an incredible story.
Yeah. And that, there's whole podcasts about that. And the actor, what's his name? Patton Oswalt.
Mm-hmm.
His late wife
Yes,
was
that's right.
was like a journalist who really helped keep that alive and helped in the investigation in a way.
Yes.
Okay, now that year 2018 really, I mean, it caught our attention. I think you and I even said like, well, wait a minute. If they can do that for this, why wouldn't
Why aren't they just having these things every hour? Yeah.
Yeah. So the police all around the country think the exact same thing. They're like, wait a minute. And so she said that year was insane. By early 2019, she was like, we were not staffed up or ready.
Right.
It became clear that our whole thing, like, sure, we'll do what work we can, but what we really need to do is train people to do this. Because according to scholarly articles, there are, or at least in the year 2022, there were more than 240,000 unsolved homicides. Not just in that one year, but I mean just cumulatively.
That's insane.
Yeah. So as excited as we are when we hear, oh my God, her team, they solved 300 murders. It's like, yeah, but there's 240,000 people who've gotten away with murder historically. And that number grows by 6,000 every year.
Oh my God.
And that's the unsolved homicides. Now that doesn't take into account the unsolved rapes. It also does not take into account there's 21,000 open missing person cases and 14,000 cases of remains that have been found, but like they can't figure out who it is.
Is it going to get to where it can be done at scale? Like I get it. Now we're doing 20 a year.
Yes. Okay. So now the increasingly like, well-funded places like LA County Sheriffs or Orange County Sheriffs, like, yes, they have their own people on staff now who can do it. Okay, privacy. See, this is a big thing because as they start to clear all these cases, it's great, Golden State Killer, whatever. But like, there are other people like, wait, whoa. When I put my DNA on there, and some of the big players like Ancestry and 23andMe get spooked about the publicity of their data.
But were they just handing it over to these people?
Well, no, like I said, I think the cops are just accessing these sites. Like you don't even need to get permission. Like you know what I'm saying? It's like it's
just doing a search
like I didn't need to get permission. I uploaded my DNA, and then the next morning I got emails like, "Hey, Kit, you have a third cousin living in blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And by the way, it's just the DNA is fascinating on its own because all these families are finding out like, whoa, granddad had a child out of wedlock that we never knew about, or dad had like, people find out like, oh, you have a third cousin who lives in Vietnam.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the guy had a kid when he was a soldier in Vietnam.
Well, that oil tycoon Hunt from Texas, like, who at the time, I think in the early 20th century was like one of the wealthiest men in the world. It turns out he not only had one secret family, he had 3 secret families, like with kids. And then after he died, all these other kids came forward and said that they were his, so it was like exactly what you're saying is like, imagine now.
I'm fascinated by the secret family thing, like the trucker who it turns out he had a family
in every stop.
Iowa and also Sacramento. You know who else had a secret family? Do you remember the guy on CBS? He would do like the On the Road with Charles Kuralt.
Oh, yeah, of course.
He had a second family.
What?
Yeah. Yeah, and they love him. The wife was like, he was the best guy ever. But like, yeah, he had 2 families.
Oh, wow.
That's a real mind-blowing thing when people get a DNA result and they're like, wait a minute, the guy I grew up with thinking was my biological dad is not my biological dad. Like, that's kind of crazy.
Really crazy, yeah.
Ancestry, 23andMe, and some others get spooked about the publicity, and some of them take steps to forbid the use of any of their data by law enforcement agencies.
Right.
Then there's some companies that say, okay, well, what we're going to do is we're going to have an opt-in, opt-out feature where you can say, yes, that's fine using mine, and other people can say no. It's entirely ludicrous because it's like, okay, you opt in, but it's like you're giving your permission, but the reality is your DNA implicates everybody you're related to.
It's all or nothing. As soon as one person says, okay, then it's like, okay, you just ruined it for everybody.
Yeah, the fourth cousin of yours who like kills somebody in Wisconsin or whatever. It's like he didn't agree to DNA being used for this, but
Right. Which cousin? I do have some cousins in Wisconsin. Shady past. He said he hit a deer. I don't know. Was that a real person? Okay. Maybe.
Speaking of Wisconsin, is that poor bastard still in prison? The
Jeffrey Dahmer?
Manitowoc or what?
Oh, yeah, that guy. Poor guy. What's going on with that guy?
I love that after I said poor bastard, you said Jeffrey Dahmer.
I didn't say that after poor bastard.
I said, is that poor bastard in
But you think
Wisconsin
Hitler?
still in prison?
No.
He's a Dahmer?
No, I said that bastard. Poor bastard.
No. What's the name of the guy? Avery?
Stephen Avery. Yeah.
Stephen Avery. So it really is kind of a mess right now, and it's all being sorted out. And people like Moore were bummed out when they realized that, okay, Ancestry says no more use of, 23andMe, Julian's Ancestry, no more use of our data. And Moore said, there's a public policy thing here as well, though. Like, I understand people have privacy rights, but like we're solving cases that have tortured people for 40 years.
Right.
We're identifying remains that have been unidentified for years. But my own feeling is really that the horse is kind of out of the barn.
Yeah, it's over. It's over.
The DNA, even just the amount of DNA that's already online, even before things started getting yanked off. I think that the privacy thing's going to go by the wayside, and cops are going to get better and better at doing this process. And the cold case, I mean, I don't know that they'll make a dent in the 240,000 unsolved homicides.
Yeah,
because it also depends on, like, do we have a good sample from the scene? Like, you have to have some DNA from the scene. Also, it seems like they've just gotten better at the basic DNA testing. That in the old days, they're like, oh, there's not enough here. And nowadays, they're like, there's plenty there. Like,
right.
That's plenty.
Yeah, you used to need like a cubic foot. Like we need like we need like a section of the person.
We need a painter's gallon. Do you have a painter's gallon of the suspect's blood?
One finger is good. Two would be much better.
The other thing that her company was doing, it was a different group at her company, but it's pretty amazing. Where just from the DNA at the crime scene, they come up with a picture of what the killer probably looked like.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And then if you look at the like before and after, like who they thought the suspect would look like, and then they arrest the guy, and it's shocking. Some of them are right on the money. I'm so used to crime scene or eyewitness testimony, and then the sketch.
Sometimes the sketches are pretty good.
Sometimes they're good, I guess.
The Unabomber one was pretty famous.
The
sunglasses and the hood.
Last of all, because I started with her, I'd like to come back to Ms. Moore to hear her or get a sense of her, and to get her kind of vibe, her approach as an investigator. Do me a favor, go onto YouTube or onto any podcast platform, pop in her name. She gives amazing interviews, and she is the most down to earth, smart, but like she explains things in a really clear way. She had her own show in 2020 on ABC called The Genetic Detective.
Oh, cool.
Really impressive. And she's got like the why, like why she's in it and what's, interesting about it to her, but also the satisfaction that she gets about, forget about the cold cases, but just like getting people in touch with their birth parents or
incredible.
Helping, families get a positive ID on a soldier's remains that, that had gone unidentified. Anyway, but it's a good, it reminded me of a guy I interviewed when I was a newspaper reporter I was in Maine near Biddeford.
Nice.
I was interviewing this guy. We were doing a story about commercial fishing, and he was nervous about like dealing with a reporter. And he's like, yeah, just don't make me look like an idiot. He said, this is my favorite. It took me a long time to find my line of work. Like, this is like my fourth job, my fourth career. He's like, don't screw this up for me. And it's stuck in my head, that whole concept of like a fourth career, like that it can take a while to find the thing that you're actually meant to be doing.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what it was with this, with CeCe Moore. Is she was doing fine. She was earning money. living down in Orange County or wherever she was, earning money, In fact, she got so into the genealogy and she started getting paid for it, and she just turned over her business to her husband. She said, can you just do you cast the commercials, you direct the commercials, you just do all that and keep that business running. I want to do this genealogy thing for a while. So, it's a real like follow your passion, and all of us benefit from it.
Unless you were trying to get away with murder.
Unless you're one of your relatives. But it's fun now that we've put this back onto some people's radars to, when you're looking at the news, see how often it comes up now.
Right.
And it seems like every day a cold case is getting solved.
Yes.
And it's not even just cold cases. I mean, it's exactly how they found the dude in Idaho who killed the 4 girls, college students, or I guess it was like 3 girls and 1 guy.
Right. The DNA on the knife or whatever, or the sheath.
Yeah, they had touch DNA on the sheath, and then they do the old like, okay, let's run it through all the DNA that all these jokers have put onto the internet, just voluntarily, find people, build a tree, blah, blah, blah. And by that point, they were doing it pretty quickly. They
caught him. Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah,
wow.
That was a terrifying case.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But part of the reason I did this one today is I'm just really taken with the character of Cece Moore, but also I wanted to sort of, for you and I to dip our feet into the pool of true crime, start talking about this and see if that's a good fit for next year or next season.
I think it's fascinating, especially when you consider like these different takes on true crime, like whether it's the introduction of technology that now can solve these 40-year-old cases. I mean, the guy they just arrested, he's been free for 40 years. You must believe he thought he got away with it.
Absolutely.
So the fact that you can now solve them is incredible, because you'd think over time less likely, instead more likely. That's crazy.
All of a sudden, you're feeling great.
That guy didn't look like he was feeling great, by the way. I don't know if you saw him.
He wasn't missing any meals. I'll tell you that.
Like he was suffering from some heartburn.
But he also had like some blood on his forearm when they were handcuffing him. And then the other thing I noticed, I think we talked about this, they had just handcuffed him and they were already clipping his fingernails.
Right. But it is LA. Like, it's important to be manicured. Like, you never know, paparazzi, whatever. Like, you got to be prepared.
You think that's for the arraignment, the first court appearance?
Exactly. Look, we're not savages. Like, we treat our prisoners well. Like, they're manicured first, haircut. Let's go.
I mean, I assume it was for the DNA, but I guess it could also conceivably be for officer protection if the guy's going to scratch up their faces or something. But I was going to say, do you think any of those people have been feeling like hot under the collar the last few years as they realize like,
I think it does increase your anxiety.
Do you think they'll get the dude that parachuted out of the airplane with the money?
Oh, D.B. Cooper. I don't know if they got enough DNA off that tie that he left on the plane. I think that's the big debate.
That one, I almost kind of root for bank robbers. Or he's not a bank robber, but I almost kind of root for that. That one's more like Harrison Ford in The Fugitive. And also, he parachuted out of a plane. Like,
insanity, like in bad weather. On that note, but Colonel Chorf, that is fascinating, interesting to see, like the confluence of the internet with these companies and the technology all coming together to solve cases. Crazy.
Yeah, and also people who realize that they're in the right spot at the right time and who are like, okay, wait, hold on. Now, like, this is a very, very powerful tool.
So I am not going to tease the last episode of this season of Killer Inventions. Still deciding between a couple very good ones, but really enjoyed hearing about this genealogy. I'm very curious to see more about this Cece and see how she explains her methodology, to see what is proprietary about it. Like, I'm still a little curious as to why I can't just go do what she's doing.
Well, I mean, believe me. I mean, just build your own tree for 5 minutes.
I can't do any of it.
You get a frickin' migraine. Just YouTube her, Cece Moore, CECE, and then more, and just a great interview.
Fantastic.
Great personality. Okay, so I will see you next week, and that'll be it for Killer Inventions.
You got to write in to killermeansawesome@gmail.com if you have thoughts on what next season should feature. Could be a true crime, could be back to shipwrecks. Who knows?
And if you write in and you put a mailing address in there, we still have 1 box of golf balls left with the Killer Shipwrecks logo on them.
Those are Titleist. Those are nice.
Yeah, collector's item.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. We will see you next time on Killer Inventions.
Sounds good.
Hello? Is somebody there?
Please, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided.